So there are a lot of researches which shows how our attitude decides the quality of our life, and not even just the quality of life, even our lifespan, right? And what they find is the people who have a positive outlook toward their life, they even live longer as compared to the people who are looking the life with the negative glasses. Yeah. And there are two fundamental archetypes. So one is what we can define as a benefit finder, another one is what we can define as a fault finder, right? And it is said that the fault finder will find the fault even in the heaven, and the benefit finder will find the opportunity even in the most dire situation, right? So two fundamental glasses through which we can see the life, benefit finder and the fault finder. And what they found in the research, one of the research they did was this nun study. So they interviewed some of the nuns who are being ordained or who are being trained to become nun, and they asked them to write a letter or asked them to write an essay about how they feel about the whole situation, right? And based on their essay, they divided them into the four quartile 1, 2, 3, 4. And the quartile 1 is the most cheerful people, right? The people who are seeing things from the positive perspective. On the other hand, the people who are in the quartile 4 is somewhat negative, or they just don't care about being nun or anything like that. And what they find is that at the age of 85, I think this was like a pretty long study, right? And what they find is at the age of 85, 90% of, I think 90 plus percent of the quartile 1 nuns were still alive. The nuns who are more cheerful, as compared to only 34 or 30% nuns who are in the quartile 4 were alive, right? So they even and they find it is directly correlated with their attitude towards the life, right? The more positive people, the most people who are benefit finder are living longer as compared to the people who are seeing life with the negative glasses. Yeah. And the challenge here is the culture we are living in, and the media, the way the media feeding us the information is by default negative, right? If you look into a news, whatever news you see, you will find 9 out of 10 news are going to be about terrorism, and some big CEO did some kind of a scam, or in India, if you're in India, some kind of a guru is doing some kind of a scam, and all these kind of news, right? You will find 9 out of 10 of these news are negative, right? And if we consume that kind of information without balancing it with the positive, our internal scheme also become negative. We also become fault finder. We also think like, the world is very negative place, world is very dangerous place, and things like these, right? But in reality, world is not so much negative, right? There are people who are doing wonderful job. There are people who are we are living in a somewhat free world, right? We have access to the education, the resources, internet, and all these things. A lot of people are doing great job, right? And that's, if we don't put our focus there and we only put our focus on the negative thing, it appears like the world is negative. But in reality, it is not negative, right? We are out of balance, right? So if we don't practice something like a benefit finding or gratitude and all these kind of practices that is positive psychologists are referring, then by default we are going to become a fault finder, right? And if we are just consuming the media, by the nature of the media and the culture, we are going to become fault finder, right? For example, let's say I live in India, and if I see the India from the negative perspective, from the negative lens, from the lens of fault finding, and if what is the media is feeding me and all these kind of things, it will look something like this, that the India is a third world, right? We have like a lot of issues. We don't have a proper health, we don't have proper air quality, we don't have proper education. A lot of people are still begging. It's just like nobody is following any kind of traffic rules. Lot of death which can be avoided because of the poor infrastructure and all these kind of things, right? Air is too polluted, so much competition. There is how can anybody can do anything in this kind of environment, in this kind of a culture, right? How can somebody become successful in this kind of a culture, right? So less resources, so many competition, and all these kind of things, right? If I see it from the negative perspective, it is very easy to become hopeless, right? If I live my life, if I see my life through this angle, this glass, it is very difficult to live any kind of a quality of life. And it is, what I'm saying is not really false also, right? It is true, but I'm focusing too much from the negative angle on the same situation, right? And let's see if I say the same situation from the positive angle, right? So the first thing that comes to my mind is, first of all, India is very, I have like a 10 years of career. Out of 10 years, for 5 years I didn't have to work, right, because India is not so expensive. I could enjoy a really good quality of life without working, and I could explore so much other things which could have been not really possible in any other country, right? Because the quality, because the it is less expensive to live in India, less expensive to even maintain a good quality of life, right? I could do things like 45 days of meditation retreat, right, without a phone or anything like that, and without worrying about the finances, right? I could travel so much in the different places. I could experiment it with so many different things. I could stay with so many different communities. I could enjoy the life in so many varieties, because I don't see if it was possible if I was in any other country, right? Just for basic survival, you need to, continue to work, right? So that is so much, that's like a real positive thing, that you have a lot more freedom, especially when I was in my 20. I'm really grateful that I could actually do all these things, and I don't know how it was possible in any other country, right? Another thing, in India we have like a real problems, right? We have real problems to solve, real meaningful problems to solve, right? Things like education, health, and these kind of a problem, which if we solve as a work, which also gives us a meaning, not just our livelihood. Of course we need our livelihood and all that, but it also gives us the meaning, right? There are things that can be solved which, which are meaningful to be solved, right? Which gives the sense of meaning and all that. Another thing, this is my own perspective based on the amount of traveling I did, is that India, I still feel like in most of the places, right, most of the, especially the countryside places where I live, the people are still very welcoming, people are still very inviting and very welcoming about making you the part of the community, right? And that is so beautiful, like that kind of a human connection, that kind of openness is very beautiful, right? And there's so many different things, right? So if I can change my angle, and it is also not false, this is also true, that is also true, both things are true, but it is how I see the world, right? The fact is still the same, the fact is the fact, but if I see it from the different angle, you can see how it changes the quality of my life, right? One is much more constructive, productive, and empowering. Another one is more, puts you in the state of depression and distress, right? So that is what the positive psychologists are trying to point out, is that if we have a better frame, if we have a frame of a benefit finder, frame of a person who is looking to the world from the positive angle and from the angle of seeing opportunities in the scenarios, that kind of a person is going to have a better quality of life, yeah, as compared to if the person is looking the world from the fault finding and negative angle, that person is going to have more difficult life, right? And here we are not twisting the facts. We are not like world is all flowery place and everything is going well and all these kind of things. It's not like that. What they are suggesting is, first you need to balance, right? There are a lot of positive good things are happening in the world, and there's also some nasty evil things are happening in the world. You cannot just focus on the nasty evil thing and say that the entire world is, all the crooked and everything. You also need to balance it with the positive things, right? The real thing, the things that we are taking for the granted, right? For example, the hot, even just something like the hot water coming into your shower, the flights that is going, it takes only 1 hour from here to get to any other place, and all these things we are just taking for granted that we have all these things, the access to the information, the education, and all these things, right? We are just taking it for the granted, like this is by default, it is there. It is not by default, it is there. We are the free people in all these things, so we have to put the things in the perspective, right? We have to see there are actual positive things which are happening. Also there are nasty and evil things which are happening, but at least have the balance, first of all, right? We cannot just see at some negative things and say the whole world is evil and nasty. So that is one thing. And then it is to cultivate the positive aspect of our frames, right? It's to cultivate the positive aspect of the mind, positive frame to see the world, right? The frame of the gratitude. And one practice that is very well prescribed even in the ancient India, also now in the positive psychology, that the practice of gratitude, right? Being grateful for the things that we have actually. And these are not like a normal thing. The access to resources, computer information like we have now is something we should be grateful for, right? So gratefulness practice, right, and other practices which cultivate the positive aspect of the uh, positive frame towards the world, right, and that improve the quality of a life. And what the researchers are saying, the positive psychologists, is it will even improve the lifespan of the people.